My name is Dan Finucane, and I'm currently a regent. I love folk music, blues music, and I love singing and playing with other people.
My name is Ian Peoples. I'm a Jesuit regent. I'm kind of a football fanatic. Most of my weekends are spent watching at least a few games. I'm probably one of the biggest Lionel Messi fans. Hello and welcome back to MagisTalk. I'm Ian Peoples and I'm joined by my co-host and brother Jesuit, Dan Finucane. And today we're joined by another special guest for our Meet the Jesuit series, Father Sam Wilson.
Father Sam has been the associate pastor at St. Peter Claver Parish down in Punta Gorda for the last 5 years. And before coming to Belize, Father Sam spent a year in Puerto Rico for his first year of priesthood. So, Father Sam, we are really excited that we're able to have you on the show, especially because normally you're working hard down in Punta Gorda.
Right.
So we're going to get you up here to Belize City. We're happy to have you here with us.
I'm glad to be here. Yeah. Very good.
And we know that you're getting some much needed rest.
I am indeed,
as well.
for the month of August.
Mm-hmm. And he's about to do his 8-day retreat here soon, so please keep Father Sam in your prayers.
Yeah, that's right.
As you're watching this, he'll be deep in prayer, praying for everyone.
Right.
So let's return those prayers. Sam, one of the things that I know you have watched our show before, right?
Right.
And so at our show, in the intro, we always have Dan here playing the guitar, and Dan's very talented. But you yourself are also a very talented guitar player. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? When did you start playing?
I started playing when I was about 10 years old. I played for about 40 years. And then when I was a kid, I studied classical guitar for a while, but then I started listening to a lot of blues stuff, old blues stuff, Robert Johnson and some Sonny Boy Williamson and Son House, Charlie Patton, things like that. So I got really, really deep into blues and concentrated on that and got to be a pretty accomplished blues player.
Yeah, and you still listen to a lot of blues music.
Oh, yeah.
I drove up with Father Sam recently from PG, and it was blues the whole way.
It was the blues the whole way. That's right.
What is it about? I love blues music too, and love playing it. What is it about the blues that you connect with?
It's one person and a guitar, and there's no sort of fluff there. It's just raw, authentic music, and I've always been drawn to that. It's just a very genuine form of music, and I've always loved it since I was a kid. And then learning to play that style of music, you sort of get into the inside of it and realize just how ingenious it all really is. And it's a big part of my sort of musical education.
Has there ever been any connection, or is there a connection between your faith and your love of music? Is that how has that played a role in your faith life?
So long before I was ordained a priest, I was leading praise and worship during Mass, and so learned how to do a lot of the praise and worship songs, learned how to lead a liturgy on guitar. I'm not a real super accomplished musician when it comes to doing arrangements of music or reading music, but I was able to, contribute, some, way back when.
Dan, he said he has 40 years playing
40
guitar.
years.
I think that's a couple more than you.
That's maybe a couple more than me. That's maybe more than I've been alive.
Right.
Frankly.
It's not the matter of years that you have, but it's the amount of progress you make in the years that you've been playing. So.
Exactly.
So.
Wisdom.
That's right.
And Father Sam.
That's right. So. Wisdom doesn't happen overnight.
That's right. Well, before being a Jesuit, you worked as a college teacher, and so we were wondering if you could maybe talk a little bit about that. What'd you teach? Why'd you get into that line of work? I
always was into writing writing articles, writing short stories, writing poetry, and then I got into a creative writing program at the University of South Alabama and got sort of like what would be equivalent to like an MFA in writing, but also heavy concentration on literature. So really, to be honest, I had a master's degree in English. I happened to be at the right place at the right time and to know some of the right people, and I ended up getting a teaching position at the university. And I did that for about 3 years, and it was good. It was nice to have that job. 28 years old at the time, and it was a good job to have at that age.
Have you kept any of that writing?
No,
But you memorized some poems, right?
It escapes my memory. And I see where you're going with this. I'm not falling into your trap.
We'll listen to some of those poems and we'll relay them to the next episode.
That's right.
And our fact checker actually right now is saying you do have some memorized.
So you taught English literature?
I taught, the position I ended up having was teaching like English 101, basic English 102, and some basic American lit, some basic British lit, but the very sort of baseline courses, which, it was fun to teach. And I had, like 4 sections, about 100 students.
How long did you do that for?
About 3 years.
3 years, okay.
Yeah, about 3 years.
Okay. And then after that, where did you go after that?
And then after that, I left academia altogether. And because my faith had been getting stronger, I'd started going to Mass every day. Prayer was becoming more intense. Vocation was becoming more sort of urgent for me. So I went from University of South Alabama into what's called L'Arche.
Can you explain
where it's a Christian community founded by a guy named Jean Vanier, where you live with people with severe disabilities. It could be, mental, not having all your mental faculties, or the guy I worked with a lot was paralyzed and had pretty limited IQ. It could be anything. One person in our house where we lived had schizophrenia. But you live with people that have these disabilities in a Christian community. You form a home with these people, and you live and share your life with them. And so I was a caregiver mostly for 2 years in L'Arche. But moving from academia to caregiving in a home like that was just this huge sort of jarring transition. But it was extremely informative because it was just constant. You had to be constantly available and infinitely patient, and it just really, really would put you to the test. And I'd never lived in community before, so suddenly having to live in community, and, living with people in close quarters in a home was a big, big transition. And I had always lived on my own before, So that was good preparation, I think, for a priesthood, because what I remember about living in that community was there was no back door and there was no exit. You never could punch out. You were on 24/7. And someone could have an epileptic seizure, for example, 3 o'clock in the morning, and if that happened, you were on, and you had to take care of it. So it was good preparation for being a priest, I think.
Yeah, when I was in the novitiate, I had a chance to live in a large community for much less time, 7-8 weeks. But one of the takeaways that I had, and others who also spend time in L'Arche, is that it's a place where you learn how to love, not the fluffy kind of love, but the kind of, as you're saying, everybody's got a story of having to take care of somebody after they had an accident with the bathroom. And you're just kind of knee deep in the messiness of everybody's lives. And your own messiness comes up too, which I think there's something about that. I think that
Dostoevsky has a great quote about love, where he says, love is a harsh and dreadful thing. And then another writer that I really love, Flannery O'Connor, she says, some people think about Christianity as a warm electric blanket, but really it's the cross, and so that love in action really means difficult things oftentimes, right? You have the great moments where it feels great and everything's clean, and you have the messy moments where you're literally helping someone go to the bathroom, right?
Right, and one of the things too that was very formative is I think for me back then, and for a lot of people, I think you think of yourself as like, I'm a patient person, I'm a loving person, right? I'm pretty relaxed person. I'm a good person, but then it really brings it into focus when you lose your temper, on a person who is paralyzed. And you just realize how impatient you actually really are and how far from Jesus you really are. And it was part of that experience was just a real reality check. You got a long way to go, brother, before you're anywhere near where you think you are. Right? And that's a good thing to have happen so that you know where you are. And that was a big part of my experience at L'Arche.
And you said this really helped prepare you for a priestly vocation. How long were you at L'Arche, and then when did you actually enter the Society of Jesus?
Okay, I was at L'Arche for 2 years, and then, as I said, the prayer intensified, going to Mass more often. And I remember at that time, as I ended my time at L'Arche, people would come up to me and say, "Have you ever thought about being a priest?" Or sometimes people would come up to me and say, "Are you a priest?" So it was in more ways than one. The call was becoming more prominent in my life, more urgent. So finally, Jesuits would come to L'Arche, to work. And in talking with the Jesuits that worked at L'Arche, I thought, okay, I think this might be the right thing. And with the sermon, you feel called to be a priest, but then it's like, what kind of priest? Do I want to be a monk? Do I want to be a diocesan priest? Do I want to be in a religious order? And I tried the Benedictines, the Trappists. Diocesan life didn't really attract, but finally on the Jesuits, it was like, I think this might be the direction that my calling priesthood is going. So I applied for the novitiate and thought, well, if it's from God, then God will open the doors as I go. And sure enough.
Can you articulate a little bit about what was it about the Jesuits that really drew you in?
Okay, this was all a lot of prayer. Mm-hmm. And in a way, it's a little bit comical now, because if I were left to my own devices, I would have gone to the Trappists, where you wake up at 3 a.m. and you start your prayers and you pray 7 times a day, and ora et labora. You work and you pray. But in prayer, I felt the Lord very much being very upfront with me and saying, I know you. And you want to go hide in the monastery, say your prayers, be comfortable, right? And you always, as the Lord was telling me, you always don't like to be pushed. But that's not your life. Your life is going to be always going to be pushed a little bit more out of your comfort zone. And you're going to have to grow and grow and grow. So no hiding in the monastery, saying your prayers. For you, your call is to go with these guys, and they're going to push you further and further. And that's always been the case in the Society of Jesus. I can remember as a novice being dropped off at the emergency room and said, okay, you're the chaplain for the day. 10 minutes into my stay, someone died right in front of me. And then the family turned on me and asked for consolation. Push always to be more and more present to people, more loving, more merciful, more forgiving. And that's true to this day.
And even though you didn't enter a monastery, you still wake up at 3 a.m. every day.
That I do.
This guy,
for a number of reasons.
A workout machine. He works out and prays before 5 a.m. An hour of each. And so a real inspiration. So did you get up at 3 this morning?
I did. I have to confess.
See?
I did.
There it is. He's prayed up, he's worked out, he's ready to go.
Right.
Yeah.
And I just do it naturally. It's not like I'm trying to prove anything. I go to bed at 7 and I get up like around 3. That's always how it's been in Belize.
You mentioned, Sam, I really like the phrase you used. I might misquote it a little bit, but you talked about, God just kept opening doors, and that's how you kind of knew that was your path, right there. Mm-hmm. That's the path you wanted to pursue. In the society, since you've been a Jesuit, you just talked about how Jesus is kind of giving you a push out of your comfort zone. how have you seen that happen? You mentioned the example about the novitiate, but we were talking right before filming about teaching high school and the challenges that are there. How is your life as a Jesuit? How have you experienced that push, but also that the door keeps getting opened?
Okay, and sometimes the Lord can be forcefully pushing you through the door, even though you may not want to go. And teaching high school, for example, I can remember teaching high school was just not my gift. I was okay as a teacher, but I couldn't control the classroom, and it was just very difficult. And I can remember being on retreat during my second year teaching, and I was done. I was like, I want to be a priest, but I can't teach high school. I can't go any further in my formation, so this is it. I mean, I'm just going to have to either find some way to move forward, or I'm going to have to leave. That's it. So I was in the chapel. Stations of the Cross are there. And this is like around midnight. I was in the chapel, looking at the Stations of the Cross, and I realized that my entire year that had been such a struggle was like the Stations of the Cross. And then I'm sitting there praying, and very clearly, that still small voice that is God said, you went through this whole year struggling. You never once asked me for help. Not one time. It was true. It was true. And, the Lord telling me, this is like a cross that you're carrying, this experience. Let me carry it for you when you can't carry it for yourself. Ask me for help. I will be with you. I will try to help you through this experience. Turn to me. And so I can remember that was very pivotal. But also in that prayer was, but if you want to leave, there's the door. It was not the nice, cuddly Jesus, the compassionate heart of Jesus. It was very stern. I can remember that. If you want to leave, there's the door. If you leave, someone else will take your place. But this is what I'm calling you to do. And you must turn to me and allow me to help you if you want to move forward. And it was like, of course, Lord, you're right. And that sustained me through the rest of my time as a seminarian too. When everything's got hard, I would just, in my heart, my spirit, just hand over to Jesus whatever was too heavy for me to carry, and I would give it to him. And that helped me through a lot of tough times. A lot of tough times. So that was one of those moments, in seminary that was very important.
Yeah. Well, and I imagine, I know your work in Toledo is rewarding and great, but I know it's also very tough, right? And you're associate pastor of Peter Claver in PG, but that doesn't mean you're sitting around Punta Gorda all day. No. So can you describe a typical day in your ministry down there?
So, as associate pastor, I deal mostly with the villages. There's 35 of those villages that have churches, and a lot of it is going out and saying masses.
And all those churches are part of Peter Claver Parish.
Part of Peter Claver Parish. It's all part of Peter Claver. But saying mass is not enough. There's formation that has to happen, leading retreats. Something as simple as trying to form readers or Eucharistic ministers, all those things have to happen. And at the same time, funerals and baptisms and all those things are happening in all 35 of those churches. And there's been many, many times when it's just been me working those villages. So it can be very, very difficult to try to address all the needs. And sometimes you just have to realize that there's just no way that you yourself, or with your limited resources, can help all these people. And so that can be hard, not being able to do all that needs to be done.
You want to be able to provide.
Right.
Yeah, and I was just down in Toledo District with Father Sam, a couple other scholastics, Jesuit seminarians, and then Father Sam's team of Mayan people. So three people, 2 people who were Kekchi and 1 Mopan religious sister, or 3 Kekchi people and 1 Mopan religious sister. We're doing retreats down there for the lay catechists, the leaders of the church.
That's right.
So I got to see it firsthand. I mean, it's not easy getting around all those villages.
No.
those are some rocky roads, and Father Sam usually doesn't miss a pothole. So I mean,
I make sure
it's a rough ride out there. Yeah.
Right.
So.
And I do want to say that working down there, that the members of that what we call the village committee are members of our parish council that are indigenous Kekchi and Mopan are indispensable. They're some of the most solid Catholics that I've ever met in my life, and they have really assisted us in addressing the real needs of what those villages are going through.
Can we give them a little shout out? What are their names?
Yeah, it's Thomas Chuck Larson Kakul and his wife Teresa Kakul, or Kekchi. Of course, Sister Kenia Bowl, Mopan sister from the Sisters of Charity of Nazareth from Kentucky. But absolutely indispensable. We couldn't do it without them. They're really helping us to understand at a deeper level what the real deep needs are and wants. And so that's that collaboration that happens. And, listening to them, because they have told me many times, it's not like they're just saying, yes, Father, yes, Father. Many times they have told me, Father, that's a wrong move. Here's why. According to our culture, or because of this village background, or because of this family connection, that's a wrong decision. Let's rework this. And I always have accepted that. And we listen to each other and discern together and pray together as we sort of navigate all the problems in the villages there.
And it's clearly from the last year, listening to you talk about your experiences there, and now hearing from Ian too. I wonder, Father Sam, you and Ian too, if you want to jump in. What the rest of the church in Belize, what should they know about the church in Toledo? So what are the contributions that the church in Toledo is making to not just the Belizean church, but the church in general? Where's the beauty? What have you been enchanted by in your time there?
Okay, the church in Toledo, the faith is very deep. And the church there has limped along for at least 15 years in ways that, come from several sources. The church has really had to struggle. But what has been very moving and beautiful to me is that in spite of all those struggles, people have hung on to their Catholic faith. And it's a very beautiful and profound faith, very grounded in the culture as well. People love their Catholic church and their Catholic faith at a very deep level. And come what may, through whatever adversities that may come, they have always hung on to that faith. And it's a beautiful thing to see, the depth and the sincerity of people there, how they approach their Catholic faith. To me, has been very inspirational.
Yeah, I would echo that based off my limited experience in the church there, but it's just the way they worship there, the Mass, or just even praying together and singing, it's very powerful. Everyone really lifts their voice in song. When the church is singing, oftentimes they don't have instruments. Oftentimes it's just their voices, right? Other times they might have a guitar, or what's the wooden instrument?
The marimba.
The marimba sounds wonderful.
Right.
So I got to hear that once, and that was in Halate, I believe. And it sounded great. So just the musicality and the joy of people when they're worshiping.
Where it hits home for me is the prayers of petition. You remember this from the masses that
It was kind of shocking for me, to be honest.
But the entire church, their voices sort of swell into these prayers that are like cries to God. They're all praying their own individual prayers together, but it kind of reaches a crescendo where the whole church is crying out to God for what it is they need. And it's not as formal as we might experience in other churches like in the United States, let us pray for our government leaders and let us pray for our bishop. We pray to the Lord. It's not like that. It's this swell of voices crying out to God for their needs, and the whole church lifts up all these prayers at the same time. And it can go on for quite a while. It's always moved me. If I could, sometimes I ask myself if only I could pray more like that from the depth of the heart,
And like I said, that was a little bit shocking to me because I'm used to the formal, very structured.
Right.
We all say the same thing at the same time.
Right.
And literally it is just people crying out. And then at the end, and I asked this because I was honest with our team. I said, look, I don't know if I'm comfortable with this, because it's just so different. And they said, well, this is what happened. And then at the end, the lay leader, one of the leaders of the church, right, will sort of gather all these prayers into one, kind of like the priest does at Mass, and then commit them all to the Lord as a unified sort of prayer. So it is kind of shocking, but it is very powerful too. I mean, I imagined, sort of a meditation of the Incarnation when God was looking down at the earth and decided to enter into it, hearing the cries of the poor. I imagined
something like
this
that.
is something kind of like what God must experience, just hearing the cries of the people.
It's just cacophony of voices.
Yeah, in need, so definitely shocking but beautiful, and just very moving,
And the whole Mass, as you guys witnessed when you were down there with me, the Masses in the villages it's always from the heart like that. Everything from the heart.
Father Sam, final question would just be, it's your second assignment as a priest, but it's the longest assignment as a priest that you've had by far. So how are you being formed in your priesthood by the people you serve in Toledo?
Well, it's the same process that's happened since the very beginning, always being pushed more and more. So my first year priesthood was in Puerto Rico, and that was all in Spanish, which I didn't really speak until I got there. So my first year priesthood was in Spanish that I had to learn as I went. And then going out to 35 some villages in desperate need. A lot of those villages, they speak Quechua or Mopan. English a lot of times is the second language. Extremely challenged. And I would say that the way I'm being formed is it's a deeper and deeper surrender to, even if I don't know the language very well, and even if it's a long drive, and even if it's uncomfortable, even if I'm sleeping in a church in a hammock, or people may not like you, and the decisions that you have to make. It's okay because it's all about surrendering to what Christ is doing and letting go of your expectations or whatever comfort or whatever you feel is necessary that really is not necessary. But a continuing process of just letting go of the things that might be holding you back somehow. And so I think that's in the end the ongoing formation, but definitely working in the villages in Toledo has forced me to just surrender at a deeper level as a priest,
And I think if people want to see some of your ministry in action, I believe American Media, which is a Jesuit media company based out of New York City in the States, they did a story on, they produced a video story, right? Our very own Jeremy Zippel, Father Jeremy Zippel, filmed and produced a video for American Media. So we'll link to that in the show. So if you're watching this on Guadalupe Media's television channel, you go to Facebook or YouTube, you can find that link. Dan wasn't quite being honest with you, Father Sam. He said it was a final question. Well, it wasn't. We have a final question. We usually always, 99% of the time, end our shows with a question that we all answer. So our question today, considering you've taught American literature, British literature, what is your favorite novel?
My favorite novel of all time.
What's your favorite novel of all time and why?
Favorite novel of all time. And you're not going to expect this, but It's Les Miserables by Victor Hugo. Les Miserables by Victor Hugo. And that whole book is about someone who is in the process of redemption. And one of my favorite parts at the very beginning, if you read that book, is the bishop at the very beginning. That is the model of what, probably every religion should be, is a person who is among the people and sort of pours himself out and begins the process of the main character's redemption. But you're tying on to a long book there. That's like 1,500 pages.
Yeah, Les Miserables. It's a huge work. I'd rather watch the movie, I think.
Yeah, you're missing a lot if you just watch the movie.
The book is yes. Dan, throwing the question over to you.
So Les Miserables is actually, it would be maybe number 2 for me. And it is, the character of the bishop is an astounding character. But I'd have to say my favorite novel is Gilead by Marilyn Robinson. It's a 70-something-year-old Congregationalist minister writing to his 10-year-old son. He has a son way later in life, and it's just a beautiful book of him kind of talking about his father, his grandfather, and about kind of lessons that he's learned in life. Especially, he had a family earlier on in his life, and you find out what happened to them as the book goes on. And then just as the book is ending, it's him kind of instructing his son before he dies, because he knows he's not going to be around to watch him grow up. So it's a very poignant book, but it's got a lot of theology and a lot of just wisdom. And it's written by a woman from the Dakotas, but it's this old man. So it's just a great work of imagination. It's beautiful. Yeah. Ian, what would you say?
There's a couple. I've read so much nonfiction lately that it's kind of hard to pinpoint. But the novels that I have read recently, I've read the Lord of the Rings multiple times, probably a few times now. And that's a book that I can keep coming back to, and it's one novel. It's divided into 6 books, even though we typically see it divided into 3 long novels. It's actually 6 books, 1 novel. And it has everything, right? It has sacrifice, it has friendship, it has beautiful poetry in different languages. J.R. Tolkien created a whole universe essentially through this work. And J.R. Tolkien was a devout Catholic man, and so you can see, even though he says he didn't write allegories, but he did imbue this whole universe that he created with a very Christian ethos. And so just a wonderful book. So if you only watch the movies for Lord of the Rings, you are missing out on a lot as well. So so that's my favorite novel. What's your favorite novel, audience? If you're on Facebook or YouTube, leave that in the comments. Let us know what other things you'd like us to talk about on our show. I want to thank you for being with us today. I want to thank especially Father Sam Wilson.
Sure, thank you. Thank you.
And Father Sam's on vacation right now, essentially, so thanks for taking time with us.
Yeah. Glad to do it.
All right, and we'll see you all again soon. Thank you for joining us.